Former U.S. President and Nobel Peace Prize winner Jimmy Carter has died at the age of 100. He was born on October 1, 1924, and was one of 4 children of a farmer and a shopkeeper. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1946 and served in the nuclear submarine program, but left to manage his family peanut farming business. He married his wife Rosalind in 1946, a union he called, quote, the most important thing in my life. Together, they had 3 sons and a daughter. Carter had been a centrist as governor of Georgia with populist tendencies when he moved into the White House as the 39th U.S. president.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
He served from January 1977 to January 1981. His one-term presidency was marked by the 1978 Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt, bringing some stability to the Middle East. But it was also dogged by an economy in recession, persistent unpopularity, and the Iran hostage crisis that consumed his final 444 days in office. He was swept from office in an electoral landslide in 1980 as voters embraced Republican challenger Ronald Reagan. Despite his difficulties, Carter had few rivals for accomplishments as a former president. He worked for decades on humanitarian causes and was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 for his efforts to promote human rights and resolve conflicts around the world. In recent years, he had experienced several health issues, including melanoma that spread to his liver and brain. He died at his home in Plains, Georgia on Sunday, according to the Carter Center. Carter lived longer after his term in office than any other U.S. president. Along the way, he earned a reputation as a better former president than he was a president, a status he readily acknowledged.
Rusiya tərəfi Azərbaycandan üzr istəməlidir.
The Russian side must apologize to Azerbaijan. Secondly, it must acknowledge its guilt. Thirdly, those responsible must be punished, brought to criminal responsibility, and compensation must be paid to the Azerbaijani state, to the injured passengers and crew members. These are our conditions. The first of these was fulfilled yesterday. I do hope that the other conditions will also be accepted.
Onlardan biri, birincisi artıq təmin edildi.
Clashes broke out between police and protesters in Georgia's capital Tbilisi on Sunday as the country's new president was sworn in amid a political crisis. Opponents of Mikhail Kavalishvili have been protesting since October over a disputed parliamentary election and a move by his ruling Georgian Dream Party to freeze application talks for membership of the European Union. A hardline critic of the West, Kavalishvili has repeatedly accused Western intelligence agencies of plotting to drive Georgia into war with neighboring Russia. After his swearing-in ceremony, he said, quote, "The Georgian people have always understood that peace is the main prerequisite for survival and development." Outgoing President Salome Zurabishvili gave a defiant speech to supporters as she left the presidential palace, saying Kavalishvili had no legitimacy as leader. "I am taking legitimacy with me," she said. "I am taking the flag with me. I am taking your trust with me." Pro-EU Zurabishvili said lawmakers who chose the new president were elected in an October parliamentary election that was marred by fraud. Local and international election monitors have said violations could have affected the results, and Western countries have called for an investigation. But Georgian Dream and the country's election commission say that the October election was free and fair. Georgia's 4 main pro-EU opposition parties have since boycotted parliament. They say Zurabishvili will remain the legitimate president until fresh elections are held. Police have cracked down on protests with over 400 people, including senior opposition leaders, detained. The presidential standoff is seen as a watershed moment in Georgia. The mountainous country of 3.7 million people had until recently been regarded as among the most democratic and pro-Western of the former Soviet states. The country has a long-standing national goal of joining the EU that is written into its constitution.
This new board game is called 2045, where players can participate in an imaginary Chinese invasion 20 years in the future. The board game simulates an armed conflict near Taiwan, and it's releasing at a time of renewed tensions with Beijing. 2045 lets players face the challenges of war by role-playing characters in the 10 days ahead of an attack. Gamers use colorful cards to take on the guises of Taiwan soldiers, Chinese spies, pro-China politicians, and citizens defending their home. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own and has never renounced the use of force to bring the island under its control. Taiwan's president and his government strongly object to China's sovereignty claim and say only the island's people can decide their future. The board game's maker, Mizo Games, began raising money for the project in August. The Taiwanese company raised over $120,000 within 2.5 months. Chang Shaolian is Mizo's founder.
I want the players to feel that they want to win and to think about what they will do to win. In this game there are two types of victories, individual victory and the victory of Taiwan. The two outcomes pose a huge conflict of values for the players. I don't want players to play the game with just the mindset to learn, but I want them to play the game with the desire to participate in and win this war on the table.
The game is also set for release in the US and Europe. Players who tested the game told Reuters they learned more about the implications of real war.
Through this game, players can learn where the People's Liberation Army may land. Although I care about political issues, I'm not very knowledgeable on military matters. And so through this game, I understood more about where the PLA may land in Taiwan and launch an attack.
China has ramped up military activities close to Taiwan in recent years, including massing naval forces around the island this month. And the development of 2045 came at a time when Taiwan officials have intensified preparations for scenarios including a China conflict. Last week, Taiwan's presidential office said it had held its own tabletop exercise for the first time with government agencies beyond the armed forces. Officials told Reuters the exercise simulated scenarios of the island on the brink of conflict to test the readiness of the government and civil society.
Japan's factories might be turning the corner. Figures out Monday showed activity still shrinking, but at a slower pace. The closely watched Ojibun Bank Purchasing Managers Index for Manufacturing rose to 49.6 in December. That's up on the month before, and closer to the key 50-point mark that indicates rising activity. Declines in new orders eased, but still remained down for a 19th straight month. Japan has been battling subdued demand both at home and in key overseas markets. Some firms in the latest survey suggested weakness in the market for semiconductors was behind the latest negative figure. Employment showed signs of a pickup though. It expanded in December, reversing the previous month's fall and hitting its highest level since April. Firms said they were hiring more workers due to labour shortages and in preparation for future demand. Other figures showed inflation being boosted by the weak yen, which makes imports more expensive. As a result, firms raised their output prices at the fastest pace in 5 months.